Hello, I'm here today with Dr. Isabel Gross, who is a member of IPSS, and she's actually sits on the board of directors for IPSS. We're going to discuss one of her latest publications. It is a full learning module that has just been published to MedEd Portal. So we're going to discuss that particular module and where it came from, where she'd like it to go, etc. So by way of introduction, Isabel was born and raised in Germany, and she earned her MD and a PhD at the Albert Ludwigs University in Freiburg, Germany. She started a pediatric residency in Germany at Children's Hospital Tübingen, and then moved to the United States to complete a pediatric residency and do a chief residency at the University of South Florida. Now, as if her plate wasn't quite full enough, during her residency, she completed a master's in public health with a concentration in disaster management and humanitarian relief. Now, she did do that there at the University of South Florida in Tampa, so she didn't have to drive too far. And Dr. Gross is currently an assistant professor of clinical pediatrics, specializing in emergency medicine at the Yale University School of Medicine. And as I said before, she is an active member of IPSS. She's also a member of the Inspire Pediatric Research Network, where she chairs the Scientific Review Committee. So, welcome, Dr. Gross.
Well,
thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. The pleasure is on my
I want to talk to you. Good. I want to talk about the module that you and your group just recently published, and which is going to be added to the scenario library in the next revision. That particular scenario is entitled Pediatric Emergency Didactics and Simulation Serotonin Syndrome. So it's more than just a scenario. It's basically the entire learning module. Is that correct?
That is correct, Ed. That is very correct.
And so what was the need that you were trying to fill when you created this module? Because I know it seems like there was multiple institutions involved.
Oh, yes.
I know Anita Thomas is in Seattle, so it seems like there's a reason for having put it together with a multi-site group of people. Could you tell us about that?
Of course, Ed. Yeah, my pleasure. And I'm just so grateful to be here today because I'm really, really happy about everything that IPSS is doing for our pediatric simulation community and everything that IPSS has done for myself and my career. So thank you so much. Regarding your question about the publication, what I will say is there is a real clinical need for our pediatric population, which I think should drive everything we do. It drives everything I do in my research and in my education efforts. Specifically around the globe lately, unfortunately, our mental health population has been growing. And I would say, although I practice in the US exclusively, it's probably true for the entire US. So we will see many patients in our pediatric emergency departments that have mental health problems, including depression. So these patients will be many times on some sort of serotonin inhibitor. And if the patient is in a major depressive episode, patient might decide to take too many of those tablets, and that will lead to what we call serotonin syndrome. It's technically a toxidrome, but that's just a little detail. The issue we have with serotonin syndrome, why this was so important for us to do, is it's a clinical diagnosis. That means there is nothing we can really test in the blood. There are certain parameters in the blood, but there's nothing we test and it comes back and it says, this is serotonin syndrome. So we really need our participants and all our future providers to know how to recognize it.
Because there's nothing really diagnostic. There's no diagnostic test, right?
There's no diagnostic test that will say this is serotonin syndrome. There are some laboratory findings. It's all a big picture of serotonin syndrome. And we really wanted to really get people more sensitive to this diagnosis because that's what we're there for. We're not there to find the exact mental health diagnosis. We're there to make sure the patient's medically safe. So these patients usually initially present fine. They're still awake. They will talk to you. And then over the course of time, as the medication is getting in their body, they will start being more agitated. The temperature will rise from the agitation, from the muscle activation, clonus, leading to seizures, leading to benzos, leading to intubation. And it's dramatic for those families. So that's why really we wanted to work on this scenario.
Okay. When you built this, when you created it, what was your process for creating, piloting, and executing this? And again, across those multiple sites where your co-authors are currently employed.
That is really what is special about this publication. We wanted to do this right. And Anita has been doing a fabulous job leading this effort, doing this right for so many scenarios. Many of us, including myself, are very passionate about just sitting down, writing a scenario, and using it on our learners. But doing it the right way, it takes a few months, it takes multiple institutions to really go through the process of getting this right. How we specifically did it is that we had a base scenario that just included what we think just kind of needs to be there. And then we went through what is called a modified Delphi process, where we sat down with experts and iteratively went through the scenario to make it better, to optimize it. Part of the team, we had a toxicologist, which was so exciting because we really also learned more and made the scenario better. And we can all sit around a table forever and talk about it until we really test it out. We won't know if it's going to work, right? So we really needed to test it out with multiple different facilitators in 5 different institutions. One of them was Yale, so that's how I was involved. And we had a total of 57 learners involved, which was very exciting. This way, we were able to really have an iterative process of trying it out, getting feedback, modifying, trying it out again, feedback, modifying. We had a living document, a Google document, where we would make updates and just improve it. And just as a very nice example how it was improved, I really liked that one, was that in one institution, somebody came up with showing dark urine so that the participants were prompted to think rhabdomyolysis. And the participants loved it. And now it has become part of the case. That is something that we did not come up with initially, and that really bring all those brains from different institutions together helped us get there.
Okay. So one of the things that I thought I heard you say was that there was a process of assessing the progress. Once you had developed this, what kinds of outcomes were you able to collect on your learners to basically support the fact that it was in fact doing what you wanted it to do?
So that's a very good question. So what we collected was mainly the learners' feedback as well as the facilitators' feedback. So in concrete words, that means after each scenario, the learners will fill out a form where they will answer questions such as, how relevant was this for my clinical practice? Was the mannequin realistic? Were there prompts that I liked or didn't like? So those were actually questions that were a tiny bit different than our classic evaluations that are focused on the facilitation. This was also focused on fidelity, technology, what can we do better? And that is the outcome we measured. What we haven't done yet, which I think that would be a great next study if somebody would like to use this case and take it to the next level, would be really to use this case and follow our learner into clinical practice. Wouldn't that be amazing? To see if they can actually better identify serotonin syndrome, better manage it. I can speak to myself. I recently managed a patient with serotonin syndrome. It is quite common. And I do believe that I did a better job having written this because it became so much more natural to me also. And I was able to teach my trainees. It's spreading. It's just wonderful. That's why we do simulation, I suppose. That's why I do it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
If somebody were going to take this scenario, if someone wanted to use this, what would be the minimum resources, equipment, supplies, personnel that one would need to actually execute this in their organization and do so effectively?
Well, we do have an appendix to this publication, which I think will be tremendously helpful to you. So you can download just the PDF, or you can download the appendix. And there we have a list of suggested equipments and prompts. If you are in a resource-limited setting, that doesn't mean resource-limited country. It could be a resource-limiting setting, meaning I want to teach somebody in my home, let's say. There are certain things that I think you actually have to have, and certain things that are optional. I would suggest that you have at least some sort of low technology mannequin. The mannequin doesn't have to do anything, but that way you have a mannequin. The second most important thing, in my opinion, from my experience running this case, is a confederate. The reason for that is one of the main symptoms that this patient will exhibit in the beginning is agitation. And with a stiff mannequin, it's very difficult. That was one of the challenges we really had, to show agitation. So I would highly encourage you to really focus on getting a confederate there. If you don't have one, do it yourself. Play a parent and say, he's so agitated, doctor, we need help. Play it and see if that will kind of enhance it. I'm very passionate about low technology simulations because you can create a very high level of fidelity with low technology. As long as you do it right and you think it through, I would say read the case, think about what am I trying to teach here, and then take a look at your resources. And you will find that this case is very suitable even if you don't have a mannequin that can sweat. One of the institutions had a mannequin that can sweat. Amazing. That does.
Well, that's kind of all the questions that I have. Do you have anything that you'd like to add to say to people who'd be interested in utilizing this scenario? Actually, I should restate that. To be able to utilize this learning module, it's really much more than just a scenario.
Absolutely. I would say just dive in, take the time, go through the entire learning module, and really see what works for you. This is not a prescriptive learning module. This is there to serve you and your learners. So I would say just dive in, read it, and see where it takes you. This is not set in stone. This learning module worked for us, and we stopped at the time when we reached consensus. That doesn't mean it's perfect. You can always develop it further or use it for other research studies, because that is the one thing that I found challenging doing simulation-based research. Sometimes it's very difficult to find a scenario that you can trust, or a learning module, so to speak, that you can trust. I would say that MEDED Portal has done a really good job at providing us with those learning modules. I'm very, very grateful for getting the opportunity to be involved in this project.
Good. So that's kind of at the end of our time span. Thank you very much for joining me today. I very much appreciate having an opportunity not only to speak with you about this module, but also just to be able to see you again. And again, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully the next time when IPSS or Inspire can get together face to face, we'll be able to see each other in person again.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Ed.
Looking forward to it.